Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Special Ed Forum. Take two, now we're recording. Here's your reminder about how to sign in by making sure that you have your name correct in the participants pane. And one more time, we will go ahead and paste the bit.ly so that everyone can access our slides for today. All right, so here's what we have planned for this forum session. It's always basically the same set of content. We do welcome an update. We do have some pretty timely and important updates for you today. Our food for thought today is going to be on graduation requirements and pathways for students with disabilities, which we know is something that has been receiving increased attention, both in terms of our concern for making sure students with disabilities are graduating and doing so in a timely manner, but also attention to the requirements and pathways. There have been a lot of changes. So we will be talking through what we know and what we hope to be coming soon. And then again, as we always end with announcements and advertisements, just what you can expect from us for the remainder of this calendar year and into 2022, which sounds really weird to say. So with that, hopefully I've covered everything. I'm gonna turn things over to Dee Dee to kick us off with updates.
Thanks, Janine. All right, we can go ahead and advance. So we are going to ask that you take just a moment to kind of share with us if and what shortages you may be experiencing in your district. We know that this is a problem across the state, and we've already heard from some of you that it's having a tremendous impact. So there are only 4 yes/no questions. So we are going to ask that you kindly just take the survey for us. And the reason we're asking for this information, and Janine, if you'll go ahead and paste the link for our survey in the chat, that would be great. But the reason we're asking is twofold, really. We are trying to keep ODE abreast of sort of the needs across the state, so specific to our region, how this is impacting our individual LEAs, but also so that we can be very sensitive and responsive to your needs in terms of how we deliver PD for you, how we provide support, what that looks like. So kind of by knowing, you know, what things are shaping up like for you in your district, that will help us to better be more responsive to your needs across the region. So we're going to ask that you just take a moment to do that. And then we'll move on here in just a minute or two. Okay, I think we'll take just about 1 more minute and then we will continue. I feel like we should have Jeopardy music playing. All right, hopefully everyone's had a chance to answer those 4 quick questions. If not, you can access this later. And again, we appreciate your input. So we're going to go ahead and move forward. And again, this kind of speaks to our survey in trying to assess how the shortages are impacting you individually. And you may already be aware of this, but we wanted to share just in case that Senate Bill 1 has passed, and that changes the requirement for substitute teachers. So you probably know that under the existing law, in order to be a substitute teacher in the state of Ohio, you have to have a post-secondary degree. Now that post-secondary degree can be in underwater basket weaving, it doesn't matter, but it has to be a post-secondary degree. The law as it stands now with this passage allows local LEAs to determine what the education requirement will be for a substitute. And so, yes, if you're wondering, that literally means that you could decide that you are going to allow someone with a high school diploma to be a sub. One of the things that it does require, though, is that your board must pass this as a board resolution and adopt it. If you do not do that, then the post-secondary requirement remains in place for your district. So the only way that you can change that is through a board resolution. And I think, Janine, did you just paste the article? Thank you so much. So yeah, we're pasting the article that explains that in great detail for you into the chat, so you can check that out later. All right, thanks. So the other thing we wanted to share with you is a really helpful sort of framework for making sure that we are doing our best to improve our inclusive practices for our students in those inclusive settings. And we know that that is very challenging, especially when we get to the upper grades. So when we get to middle school and high school, it can be really challenging because students are changing classes every period, and it can be difficult to navigate. And so one of the things that CASE and that CEC have been working on is, and shared this, is the idea of using participation plans. And the participation plan is really just a blueprint to make sure that we are putting things in place for our students so that they'll be successful in those inclusive settings. And it really involves sort of 3 tiers. So you do an ecological assessment where you're just simply looking at the routines of the classroom and determining if the logistics of the classroom, the everyday routines need some type of adaptation or modification for the student. So are the accommodations in the student's IEP sufficient? Is there something else that needs to be considered? Then you look at curricular support. So you're thinking again about the things that are in the student's IEP in terms of accommodations or modifications. Are those sufficient? Is there something else? So when you think about UDL and differentiation, you're looking at what may need to be built in for the student to be successful. And then you're looking at the embedded instruction. And one of the things that we know is that when teachers are able to identify those natural opportunities to teach skills that are lacking, that most often occurs when the difference between where the student's current skill is and the expectation for that grade level are the greatest. So when the gap is the biggest, that provides the most natural opportunity to address those skills. And so looking at that and sort of planning ahead and thinking about when those are likely to occur and how we can support students in that really helps. And it helps as we're thinking about LRE and again, as we're thinking about making sure that students are accessing that general curriculum and able to make progress, not just according to their IEP goals, but really make meaningful progress with the general curriculum. So we're going to put the link in for this as well. I will do that, but this is just a little snapshot here of sort of what those participation plans could look like. They're not cumbersome. This is not difficult. So I know sometimes teachers feel like, please don't ask us to do one more thing. We just want to reassure you that this is not a difficult process, and it's not like you have to keep redoing this. So you're taking a look at the student's schedule. So for high school students, you probably would do this once a semester and maybe the same for middle school students, but you're just sort of making this blueprint, and it really goes a long way into really supporting that collaboration between special education and general education. And so I will pop in
Hey, Dee Dee.
link for this article.
Dee Dee, before you
Yes.
do that, I just checked the link, and it looks like the settings need to be adjusted because it's saying access denied. So
yeah, I'm going to actually just put in the PDF instead.
Oh, okay, perfect.
All right, so I'm going to pop that in, and then Janine, if you want, you can go ahead and move forward.
Okay, so
right.
I wanted to give just a brief update on the preschool special education role and how that's interacting with preschool licensing. If you have someone who is in charge of preschool special education in your district that is not you, they are already aware of this information, but we know that oftentimes not everyone who attends the early childhood administrative series is at forum. So we just wanted to give you an update as to what's happening. In July, the preschool special education role 3301-5111 of the operating standards was updated, as were the preschool licensing rules. The reason I'm bringing this to your attention is that the majority of the districts in our region operate integrated classroom settings. And a big change that has happened is that it is now being stated, as you can see at the language at the bottom of the slide, that you must maintain that ratio at all times. And so that means on your roster. If a child is absent, that is not referring to that, but they're stating that you must maintain that ratio of 50-50, 50 peers, 50 students with disabilities at all times to be considered an integrated setting. The reason this is an issue is because when preschool licensing is coming for visits, if that roster does not reflect 50-50, programs are being found out of compliance. And so we wanted to bring this to your attention because this is causing districts to start to ask some questions. Janine, if you could go to the next slide. So we're just encouraging you within your districts to start to consider what least restrictive options do you have available within your district. You are not required to offer all of these options within your district, but it does state that you need to consider how could you access these options. So we really just want to prompt you to start to think about what continuum options do you offer in your district? How many students with disabilities can you serve? So as you're looking at different options, if you're operating a general education setting versus a preschool special education setting, how many students can you serve? And then what licensure does your teacher hold? Because again, that is something that is changing based on the continuum. If you're operating a general education setting, they're looking for that teacher to either be dual certified or general education setting or general ed licensed. So we just wanted to share these updates with you. As I said, if you have someone in your district responsible for preschool special education, we are having these conversations, but we just wanted to be sure that this message is making it throughout the district.
Thank you, Stacy. We have heard lots on this. Oh, can you not see my screen right now? You can. It says my screen sharing is paused. I don't know why that would be. I was trying to open Dee Dee's participation guide document and it messed up. So thumbs up, yes, you can see my screen right now. Okay, good. All right. Glad it says that. Anyway, thank you for sharing that, Stacy. That's been a lot of conversation. And thank you, John, for your update. I was just going to post in the chat, but I'll just say it since I'm talking, that for me, this document opened up in Chrome as a PDF. For some people, you might need to actually go in and force it to open in Adobe, just depending on your browser settings. So maybe Dee looked like she had an issue. Try that and see if that helps.
All right, Janine, your screen, I think, is paused again, or is somebody else screen sharing right now?
That would be me. Hang on a second. I'm not sure what's going on. Hang on one second.
I'm pretty sure I'm the next slide, but I can talk without it though. That's okay. So
oh, I gotcha. Hang on. It's coming.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you, Stacey, for posting the bit.ly. I know we had a few people join us a little late today, but thank you for getting that into the chat for us. So just wanted to touch base real quick on a special education kind of court case legal alert update. Perry Zirkle does a lot of updates on his blog and his website. He's a pretty well-known lawyer. And so one of the court cases, or two of the court cases we want to just kind of briefly touch on today, are ones that focus a lot on reading methodologies and students with dyslexia. This is kind of a hot topic right now, especially because we have the House Bill 436 that was just passed, and going into next year, 2022, we will have that dyslexia legislation and that guidebook coming out and being released. So there's going to be a lot of discussion, a lot of questions about what districts need to be implementing starting next year. So in terms of this court case, these were two court cases that went to the federal level, and they had some pretty serious consequences for the district. So I'm not going to read through the slide. There's also, Janine, I saw posted a link. You can kind of get into the court cases and see them. It's only like a little 2-page brief, so it's very easy to read through. But really what they focused on is, in terms of the court findings, needing to make sure that when we are writing our IEPs and we're having discussions with parents about addressing dyslexia or students with basic reading skills deficits, that we are really making sure that we are having robust conversation with those parents about what methodologies we're using, what strategies, what literacy programs, what's going to be in the IEP, what the SDI is going to look like for those students, because these court cases have found a lot of violations in terms of FAPE, the Andrew F standard, which is, making sure that we are offering an IEP that is reasonably calculated to ensure meaningful progress. So in these cases, they had students who had dyslexia diagnoses. They were getting some services on their IEP. They weren't making great intervention. Parents took them out of public schools, unilaterally placed them, and then asked for reimbursement. So in terms of Andrew F and FAPE violations, they found that the districts were not always coming back together and reviewing progress in a timely manner, making changes and revising those IEPs to try other interventions, to try other methodologies, and that they really want to see IEPs being a little bit more explicit about their literacy practices that they're offering to students. And then several of these parents had also had several outside previous or private evaluations done. So just wanting to make sure that we're also considering that information when there are private psychological reports being completed and provided to the school. Also want to make sure that even if you don't offer certain programming, or you have people certified in certain multisensory literacy interventions and programs, that you are considering whether or not you need to get people certified in those areas to meet the students' needs. They said that is much less costly to train people rather than going through the legal process, as we all know. And so some of these court cases are taking years and years and years to go through. So there's kind of saying, which battle do you want to have? Would you rather just train some people in your district and kind of revise IEPs as appropriate and making sure student needs are being met? Or would you rather go through this very long drawn out court process, which can take many years? And so in one of the court cases, it is actually one of the students was just their parents. It took them about 6-7 years going back and forth with the district, and then going through the court process took over 5 years, and they were just awarded $500,000 in reimbursement to the parents. So that is a very costly measure that happened in that case out in Nevada. So we just want to make sure that we are doing the best that we can for students. And I know this is going to kind of pop up a little bit more as we start getting into what districts need to implement going forward in 2022 with the dyslexia guidebook. So I just want to throw that in there for everybody. Janine, if you could advance for me, please. Thank you. So in the next area, the National Association of School Psychologists put out a new position statement. And this is kind of taking a little bit of a turn in another direction. And what they do is NASP puts out various papers and position statements on emerging hot topics, controversial items, things that are happening in the news, and they provide guidance on how to address those items legally, ethically, best practices. It is targeted towards school psychologists, but districts as a whole as well. So these can be very useful if you, as special education administrators, coordinators, intervention specialists, school psychologists, want to read through them, share them with your teams. This one talks a little bit about equity, about disproportionality, making sure that we have equitable practices and systems and procedures in place in our district to, prevent disparities from happening. So I just hit some highlights. It's about a 9-page document. So I tried to take the 9 pages and kind of summarize some bulleted points into 2 slides here. So just want to talk a little bit about discipline gaps, and the research talks about how exclusionary practices really don't show that it leads to a safer school environment for students, and that there really are some very detrimental outcomes for students who are who have these exclusionary practices occur for them within the school system. And that in order to really prevent disparities from occurring, we really need to make sure that we have a very strong tier 1 core foundation in our districts. We need to make sure we have universal design for learning. We have very strong, robust MTSS, SEL, PBIS going on. We need to make sure we're using database decision-making, and we need to make sure that we're involving our school psychologists. I know school psychologists have a lot on their plate, but when it comes to these committees and things that we have going on in our districts to really look at processes, school psychologists are really tasked with making sure that we are advocating for students and that we are looking at best practices and database decisions when it comes to revamping policies and procedures. So let's make sure that when we can include those school psychologists on those committees and that their time and participation is meaningful. And Janine, if you could advance the next slide for me, please. In terms of just preventing disparities, biggest thing, look at your data. We're going to say that a million times. You're always going to hear that from SST. Look at your data, disaggregate your data, look at it by different social categories, engage in critical questioning, examine those root causes. Same goes for when you're doing evaluations for students with potential disabilities. Looking at ruling out contextual factors, looking at doing ecological assessments, looking at, are you providing professional development for your staff on oppression, unconscious bias, and anti-racism? And so this policy, this position statement has about 14 different policy recommendations listed towards the end, which I found very helpful. So if you want to kind of take a look at that and just skim through it, that would be great. Your school psychs probably have already seen a lot of this information, but it's also good to just review with your teams as a whole. Now I'm going to pass things back on to Janine.
All right, and I'm going to pass them over to Dee Dee.
Thanks.
Sean, circling around.
Thank you. Very quickly, I just want to kind of address the elephant in the room. We know that you are aware that there are a couple of things that, we started to bring to your attention around SDI and support for school personnel at the last forum. We know that we've had a ton of questions around that, as well as some information that was given a few weeks ago around expired ETRs that is in conflict with what we have told you in the past. So here's what we're going to say. Don't change anything you're doing right now. Whichever way you went, if you have already made the shift to documenting SDI differently, don't change it. We want you to just do what you're doing until we get final clarification. We know that it's frustrating. We're frustrated as well. The reason that we brought that to your attention in the first place, as Helen and I shared back in September, districts were marked as non-compliant during selective reviews. So, OEC obviously felt confident going forward with it. So therefore we had to react. But there has been some pushback by some advocacy groups around the state. And so things are being re-examined. So if you'll just please bear with us and hold tight, we will get you, the updates as soon as we have concrete answers. What we don't want is to tell you to do something and then have to retract that. So we're just going to say we're going to push pause for right now. All right, Janine. And finally, I just wanted to let you know that in terms of the profile indicators for special ed, these are the timelines that we expect. So December, we expect to have the release for those indicators that have required actions for them. And typically those are going to be the ones that are more compliance related. And then in May, we'll have additional release of indicators that do not have required action. And we want to let you know that we will again this year have an indicator support day, and that is going to be on January 12th. And there's a live link if you're following along with our bit.ly there for registration for that. And so Janine, if you'll fast forward, I'll just let you know quickly what the day will look like so you can anticipate what's going to happen in the morning. All participants must attend the general support session, and we will go over all of the sort of logistics about what you need to do. There are some changes to the process this year. So if you've done it in the past and you're thinking, I don't need to attend, there are some things that are going to be different. And so you are definitely going to want to join us for that. Then from 10 to 2, you'll have the opportunity to watch short pre-recorded sessions for specific indicators as an option. And then from 2 to 3:30, we will hold 30-minute Q&A sessions on those specific indicators. So you can come back and join us for that. So hopefully everybody can register and participate with us on the 12th. All right, thanks, Janine. All right, I'm going to turn things over to Helen to bring us up to speed on graduation requirements and pathways for students with disabilities.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about graduation for students with disabilities for the year 2023 and beyond. As most of you know, there are still guidance documents waiting to come out, and we sent out previously I think Janine said it in an email to the directors, and we sent it in our newsletter about office hours that OEC-ODE is holding, that you can attend, and you can put your questions in prior to attending because they will go through May. So as we know right now, not everything is set in stone, which doesn't help. I understand that. For students with alternate assessment, graduation updates is a score of 500 can meet competency. However, and like I'm just going to put this out there, they are talking about a proficiency score, which could be a little bit lower, that may help students, because we know now that most of our students that are on alternate assessment are the most significant, and sometimes they are not meeting the competency. So there's more to come on that. There is a whole guidance document we've been waiting for. We thought we were going to have it in September. It's still in legal. So more will come on that. Other demonstrations, and this is not new. Remediation free score of ACT or SAT in subject areas that they did not meet proficient or competency. And then we have the career focused alternatives, 3 or higher on the web exams in a single pathway. You can do the apprenticeship used as a foundational, and you must be registered with the Ohio State Apprenticeship. I can't see my slide. Okay. And then you can obtain a state issued license for practice in a vocation that requires an examination. So students with IEPs, students with an excusal from the consequences of assessments are excused from demonstrating competency, but still require 2 seals. And we know that you can have a local seal and your state seal. And there's some information, more information coming out on Ohio Means Jobs. And I know a lot of people, we just had a transition state update, and we kind of question the Ohio Means Jobs seal being obtained by some students with more significant cognitive disabilities. And there is guidance that will come out on that also. And they're saying to look at it as kind of a modified, the 14 requirements. You can modify it based on that student's expectations, similar to, okay, they're on either alternate assessment and they have a modified curriculum. I think one of the questions might be, they're a leader. Can they be a leader in what other area that maybe isn't as significant, I shouldn't say significant, as rigorous as maybe what is on the competencies for most of our students. Like I said, that is still in discussion. We're supposed to get some release on that. I do think I sent out Ohio Means Jobs PowerPoint or a link to them. I will double check on that. The last state meeting we had when we discussed this with Ohio Means Jobs, they said there was going to be some changes as how you might think of students with more significant cognitive disabilities that might be able to meet the Ohio Means Jobs Seal. Once again, when students test, if they're not proficient, they must receive remediation, retest in that subject area, and then if they don't get the proficiency or competency, they can be excused to meet graduation requirements. Now, this even comes with our students on alternate assessment. Now, if you've already excused students from the consequences, you do not go back and amend. But students that in the 2023 class on alternate assessment, if they don't get what will be the 500 competency, or if they add a change for proficiency, they do have to receive remediation and retest. And I know we've had a lot of questions about, okay, what's remediation for students in alternate assessment? Basically, it's what you do, it's direct instruction, but I would say it would be looking at, similar to any test that a student isn't proficient in, looking at what questions were missed, where the biggest area deficit was, and, you know, honing in on that with your extended standards. I know that also raises questions for students that, and we do know with some of our students on alternate assessment, we have students that do not answer, do not respond. And if they don't respond, then, you know, the biggest suggestion I would be having would be, you know, how are we working on their communication? But then that would be part of the remediation. And if they are tested again and same situation, then they will be excused from the consequences. And was there something in the chat?
Yeah, Helen, Ann Phillips had just posted the question, all subjects to retest or just Algebra 1 and ELA 2 for retakes?
For retakes, and Dee Dee, you can jump in here with me too. I think for retakes, it's all subjects.
Right, so if you can retake for all subjects, but
yeah.
And you're right that the only ones that actually count towards graduation now are the Algebra 1 and the ELA.
Right. Okay, if you want to move to the next slide. Okay, this should not be new too much. The Citizenship Seal, B or higher in American history and government, and that will be the same for the students on alternate assessment if they do not score with a score of 500 on social studies and alternate assessment. B or higher in advanced science courses. This has brought a lot of questions because when House Bill 110 came out, this is what was said, it would be in advanced science courses. I have received a lot of questions about, okay, what about kids that are in a resource room? Or what about kids that have the most significant disabilities, cognitive disabilities that are on alternate assessment? They would have to get a 500 from what I'm understanding right now. They would not be able to earn the science seal with a B or higher. That has gone back and forth. We've been having meetings with Wendy Stoica in the Office of Assessment, and then the transition, Amy Szymanski with graduation requirements. At one time, we were told that they could get the science seal, but that is not definite yet. Like I said, there's still a guidance document that's coming out. We thought it'd be out by the end of September, but it's almost the end of November. So, and they are still going to be taking questions or having the office hours through May. So that kind of tells you that it might not come out for a while. Industry credential seal, state issued license for vocation, and that requires an examination. And then your locally designed seals. Those are what you create locally for your local district, as far as what credit or progress towards completing state requirements from a district or school from which the student transfers. My slide is kind of cut off. So Dee Dee, if you want to add something there, or Rachel. I don't just, okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, again, I think everyone's already aware, but the locally designed seals, you know, you have the flexibility to create those guidelines on, you know, what that will look like for students. So, and give credit for that. So I think everyone's aware of that. And, you know, of course, you have to have a state seal as well, which is why we're so, you know, we're so concerned and trying to get clarification on, as Helen said, you know, getting the science seal or some of those other state seals to ensure that our students with more significant disabilities are able to accomplish that.
Yeah, and that's why I think they're looking again at the Ohio Means Job Seal. And for some of our most significant students, when you have like a not volunteer, but you're looking at some of your local seals, you can look at those students too, that same way as what they're looking at Ohio Means Jobs. What does that mean for that particular student? Because they are on extended standards. So still kind of frame everything as that student, that the view of that student, if that makes sense. Okay, next slide. I don't know if there's anything in the chat. I didn't see anything new. Okay, these are 2022 graduation requirements. Now I have heard that some people, for some students that are graduating in 2022, they were able to use the 2023 and beyond. And I know they're really concerned about that student meeting one of the seals. The Ohio State test is 18 points on 7 tenths. Test. I'm not going to read all of this because basically this is what I just said. And basically this, you know this. And I also know that school counselors are having at least monthly meetings, if not weekly meetings with the state. Okay, so option 2, then you're going to demonstrate competency 684 in algebra or ELA 2. And then you also have your alternative pathways. And if you have a student on alternative pathways, then they don't have to be excused from meeting the consequences. And then the demonstration of readiness, earn 2 seals and 1 must be from the state. And I don't think I'm giving you anything new right here. You've seen this. This has been out. What we're really concerned with and where all the questions are what is the final guidance for students on alternate assessment and some of our students on IEPs that may not be able to meet certain requirements, or how will they meet certain requirements? Because we have a lot of students that came off of alternate assessment that, especially at the high school age, that are kind of that in between now, and if they hadn't been exposed to or had access to the gen ed, they've been on extended standards. So I know there are districts that are really questioning how are we getting these students graduated without excusal. You can have excusal too, but the seals are also of concern. At least those are the questions I have coming in. Do we have another slide? Okay, so people can put things in the chat or unmute and ask questions on graduation.
Okay, we have a question from Missy. Do you see it, Helen?
Yeah, I see it. And yes, it still hurts your graduation rate. At least as of now.
Good question.
But that is something too. A lot of those questions are things when you get on those office hours, or if you can get on those office hours or have someone get on those office hours, when you go into the link, it has a spot right there because all my questions were about alternate assessment. I didn't get a lot of answers, but I just say keep putting those questions out and raising those concerns, because when we're on, Dee and I are on assessment weekly, or not weekly, monthly assessment updates and alternate assessment updates. And we're asking questions all the time, and it does go back and forth. So, and we keep asking for when are you going to release the guidelines? So we know there's questions. And sorry, I didn't have more answers or definitive answers. Okay, I guess you can go to the next slide.
Okay, I think this is Tracy.
I guess one of us can speak to it unless Tracy's ready and able to talk about the UDL collaborative. Looks like maybe she's
I know.
I kept trying to get my camera and it go on and off, on and off. So sorry, so sorry. Yes, this is the Ohio UDL Collaborative's monthly PLC and sorry. What it is it is a problem of practice, and every month we have a different topic. Next month is executive function, and that will be exciting on December 7th. And what we do is we look at the topic and say, what are the barriers that occur around these topics, and how can we utilize the UDL principles to find solutions for those barriers? So it's a 1 hour situation, and it is a statewide free, it's not a training, but it's a network, but we're not calling it a network. So that's why we landed on PLC. But at any rate, it has also been in our newsletter. And so I'm going to continue to update that monthly and let everyone know the topics that up. We've got literacy coming up. We have all types of things, and it will last throughout the year. So we would love to have anyone in this. There is no registration, but if you click on where it says here, you will get the Zoom link. So again, there's no actual registration for this. That's it on that. I know that we're kind of running over, so thanks.
Thanks, Tracy. So we also just wanted to bring to your attention that we have transferred the Supporting Diverse Learners PD that we previously had in Google Classroom over to Canvas. And we have some things that are updated in there, and we are going to be adding some additional material over the next couple of months. So if you have not checked this out yet, There are 5 self-paced modules. It's completely asynchronous. As with all of our courses in Canvas, if participants complete the entire course, they get credit for that through contact hours. And you can see on the screen some of what the modules touch on. And we really do, we've designed this to try to provide some PD and some support for teachers who have students in the classroom who are working below grade level, but are not necessarily the students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. Ocali has a series on Ocali's site with the same kind of PD, only it is really tailored for those students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. What we have put together is more for, again, the students who are in inclusive settings, but are obviously struggling and working below grade level. So feel free to share this with your staff, and again, watch for additional materials and resources coming over the next couple of months.
And I just want to chime in there and say too, I just shared the link. The link is actually for our entire course catalog in Canvas. And so I just want to kind of make everybody aware about the big picture kind of strategy that we're using here, which is to try to diversify our offerings to include a lot more asynchronous options, because we know that obtaining substitutes and getting release time in this year, in this climate, is incredibly difficult, and yet professional development needs still exist. So we wanted to at least be able to offer some things that would be flexible and accessible to folks, you know, in various times that wouldn't necessarily require a substitute. So we will continue to be building out the Canvas course catalog. Right now, we just have a handful of things in here, but we would certainly welcome from you all any ideas that you have of, you know, what would be really helpful SST8 if you could build PD around XYZ, because probably if one district needs it, many districts need it, or even if you see diverse learners and you think, you know, a module on this particular topic would be incredibly helpful, we would really welcome that feedback. So I encourage you to take a look in our course catalog and let us know if you have any thoughts about that. Back to Dee Dee.
Thanks, Janine.
Okay, I'm not sure. Dee Dee, are you talking about this or am I talking about this?
Go ahead, Helen.
Oh, sorry, that was
Okay.
my bad.
Okay. Well, once again, we said keep calm. We had said there wasn't going to be any training besides the modules that are on the portal for any new teacher or any new staff person that will be administrating the alternate assessment. They must do the module trainings that are on the portal. And that is stated by the state. There's 3 modules with a test at the end, and they must receive a passing score, and then they'll get a certificate from the state. However, when we were on alternate assessment meetings, we were told that we were going to do a little bit of training on paper training because it doesn't go in depth in the modules. And the reason we're doing the paper training, they have found that some students blind and visually impaired are having a difficult time with math on the alternate assessment, doing it on a computer. We understand most kids, most students will be on the modules, but these are the dates. We will do a training on the paper in January, the 5th, the 11th, the 21st, and then alternate assessment, we will have a Q&A session. So basically just come prepared with any particular questions you have. We're not doing a training. Anybody that is that needs a refresher can certainly go in and do the modules. They're fantastic. So the Q&A. Also, I wanted to say that we know, we brought this up at the state, that with getting substitutes, the difficulty getting substitutes, how difficult that is going to be to give the alternate assessment when you might, you need someone to watch your class when you're giving it. And we also know that, you know, you break it up because since you can't give a test all in one day. It will be an 8-week, which I think it was same last year, starting February 22nd through April 15th. And we'll send out more news on that. But I guess all I can say is plan and start as early as you can and have a student ready. This is what we always say in alternate assessment, in case the student you plan to test is absent that day. Dee Dee, you have anything more to add on that?
Nope, that's perfect.
Okay. Oh, and one thing I wanted to go back to, sorry, for graduation, we are sending out a PowerPoint, the latest PowerPoint I have from October 8th, along with our forum slides.
Thank you, Helen. And thank you, team. That actually takes us to the end of today's session. We were running a little over in some of our early sections and we made up time. So I just want to pause and ask folks if there are any other questions that you have with regard to anything that we discussed today. You have us for a few more minutes. If you're able to stick around, feel free to unmute, put something in the chat. We're here to help. I'm going to put a link in the chat to the registration for our next forum session, which is January 18th, 2022. It will be here before we know it.